I think FNAF and Pokemon, and this is coming from someone, those are my two favorite franchises.
Mm-hmm.
FNAF and Pokemon were always a little mid.
Yeah,
It was always a little mid, but we liked it anyway.
Yeah.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. It's me, Rye Toast, your host with the toast, talking about the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Podcast with a very special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, hello, it is me, Dan Seibert of That Cyber Channel, your resident, why does FNAF do this to me, cynic.
True. And we are going to be talking about, FNAF as we usually do.
Mm-hmm.
As far as topics for today, I definitely wanted to dive into the FNAF Cynic whole idea and talk about good reasons why and maybe some disagreements there, because I am a resident FNAF fanboy, so it'll be a fun conversation, I thought. And I also wanted to broach the question, a lot of the times when I hear criticism with FNAF, and we'll get into it later, a lot of it is, well, it used to be really good. And I wanted to delve into, was there ever a FNAF Golden Age, or was it just new? And
Yeah, wow, we're going to unpack that for sure.
We'll unpack that for sure. But I think I want to start off with, I guess, we'll talk about, so the FNAF Cynic, I know you definitely played up a little bit, just a smidge.
I have to play it up a smidge, it's
for sure.
For the bit.
But I guess we'll start chronologically most recently. I remember watching, I believe, your short on Ruin and about the endings being unsatisfying. So what was your thoughts on Ruin? Let's talk about that.
Okay, so Ruin was it ended up being an emotional roller coaster because about halfway through Ruin, I just I stopped and I was like, this is good. This is great. This is solid. It's playing well. It the scares are pretty good, and I feel like it just felt good to play. And then I got to the endings, and then that's when, well, actually, it was the Music Man section, the mini Music Man.
Yeah. My file that I use for B-roll is just from my first playthrough, and I've chaptered out, I've markered out all the different hours so I can quickly get to a spot, and there is a 3 times the size chapter for Bonnie Bowling compared to everything else in that game. I think universally that section is not good.
No, and I think you popped into stream either during or right after it, and I was just like, this is miserable. And I do think that section in particular, there was just something about the game design in the enemies that just felt off and wrong. The mechanics were play music, get them to move around. It fairly simple stuff, but because there was so many AIs, it was, if one saw you, that was it. You were done.
Yeah, it was a weird mechanic because it presents itself as these things will follow sound, use sound. But then they can see you from across the room as well. And there's no way to shake them off. No matter how far you run, you can leave the section and they will be waiting for you at the entrance to the section.
Yeah.
That needed to be tweaked for sure.
That needed balancing. So that's when it started to crumble for me. But then when we got to the endings, in retrospect, now that I've calmed down and think about it, the original ending where if you don't do all the security cam stuff, the normal ending is solid. I think it's I think for the most part, it's solid just in the fact that it's it leaves enough open that did she die? There's enough questions of was that really Gregory or was it not? I'm more camp. That was definitely Gregory going, I'm sorry, but you messed up. So now I have to seal you off.
Yeah.
Which seems a little out of character, but then the other two, the Brazil ending, I get it. That's the trolly, weird ending, but there was just something about the pacing going up to it that felt like running into a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was...
And then you literally do as well.
Yeah.
Like, you literally... Like, not even just the pacing, but the gameplay itself, it's so sudden.
Yeah.
And it just snaps completely.
Yeah, it snaps completely, and I think there was a better way to do that.
With any kind of build-up, too.
Yeah. You just felt whiplash. Like, and that was my big problem with the Brazil ending is like, yeah, I get it, it's the troll ending, but like also, you know, does not negate you needing to pace yourself to that.
Yeah.
And then the scooper ending, I just felt like that was
the scooper ending.
That's the completionist ending, right? It's supposed to like offer a little bit more, and the most that it offered is like, you know, Scott and Steel Wool being as cryptic as it can. It's like, oh, is this sister location now? Like,
yeah,
all these sort of things, but it just felt so like anticlimactic. It's like get scooped and then like fade to black.
Yeah,
it's such a choice.
I definitely think a criticism I have of all three endings, and I've seen a lot of people either say this, somebody summed it up perfectly in one of my comments. Mm-hmm. Ruin feels like the second act of a 3-act play.
Yes, exactly. That is it.
Which leaves a lot of us kind of like, okay, are you making another DLC? Or is Help Wanted 2 supposed to be Act 3? Because Help Wanted 2 doesn't feel like it's going to be Act 3. It could be. It could be. I know the elevator you go down, but like, and like maybe you're going to get Cassie or something like that. But it still feels like it's not finished. Which, like, sure, the story keeps going, but I feel like with previous FNAF games, like kind of going before, even just going to Help Wanted, right? Like you have the ongoing story in the background, but the endings in Help Wanted feel final.
Yes.
Every single ending in Help Wanted, I feel like, feels very final, except for maybe the one where like Glitch Trap takes over your mind and it just cuts to black immediately, which like even then you can imply finality.
Yeah,
Whereas
absolutely, yeah.
In Security Base Game, some of them felt final, some of them felt like, okay, what now? In Ruin, I feel like every ending is like, and then what?
Exactly. You sit there and you're like, okay, can I see some of the consequences of these actions?
Nope. Then credits roll is what you get.
Yeah. I mean, if you think back to like old English classes and everything, when you're talking about plot lines and everything, you know, you have your build up in Act 1, you have Act 2, and then like Act 3 is you hit the climax, and then there's the wind down and the resolution.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes it feels better to just like end it right there at the high point, but there's a reason it's been like this thing exists, is because sometimes, especially with something like DLC, is you need some sort of resolution, even if that resolution is a bigger teaser. I think Roxy just saying Cassie as a question mark is not good enough, because you could go like, oh, Roxy survived, and then you think for a moment and you're like, oh wait, that could be the Mimic. Okay, so what was any of that?
Yeah, it leaves us in a state where the only thing that has changed is, I guess, M.X.E.S has been shut off. So like, okay, sure, the Mimic is now in the picture now. That's something to worry about. But like, presumably, except for maybe the Brazil ending, Cassie's still alive, presumably. Roxy is still alive. The Mimic is still there. We don't see Gregory or Vandy. Like, no states have changed. It's just one door has been opened. Yeah. And I will say, I think the Brazil ending kind of lends to this as well. Part of me wonders, because it would also be very Scott, that the Brazil ending, the funny one, this troll one with the like darker undertones. Yeah. If that one does end up being canon.
Maybe. Yeah, because
I feel like Cassie becoming, since it seems like Gregory and Vanessa are freed of Glitch Trap or whatever has been going on. So I do wonder if then Cassie becomes the new villain, which I feel like would still be a big shame with Vanny, because I don't think we ever really truly got Vanny as a villain.
It's so frustrating that like it really felt like as soon as FNAF Security Breach was announced, and like Vanny was set up to be like, this is the next villain, this is the next threat, this is the next problem. Great. And then it was like, no, Glitch Trap is the next thing. That's the next threat. That's the next problem. Like, okay, all right, cool. I'm still here for it. And now suddenly it's forget both of them. The Mimic's the new threat. The new thing. It's like, I need
Forget
you.
Burn Trap too.
Yeah.
Forget the Blob. Like
it's like you need to pick something so we can figure out what the narrative theming is and where we're going with it.
Yeah, instead of introducing a villain, having them have an arc, ending them, introducing a new villain, it's been introduce a villain. Anyway, here's a new villain. Forget about the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, forget about the other one. Here's a new villain. And I'm a little worried to see where that goes, to say the least.
And I think that really kind of gets to the root of my whole cynical take on FNAF is that I feel that as far as like the full story is, Scott makes in the early days of like those first 4, I think he made very strong choices, and there was a lot to go off of, and that's what made it exciting. But then when Sister Location came around, it was like suddenly he second guessed everything, and so now like. And even it's been a theme up until now is these second guessings and these soft choices that could literally change on a dime with new context from the next game rather than letting it be a discovery. So instead of discovering what those choices were, we're recontextualizing the story every single time. And that honestly is just exhausting.
It's less, oh, all along it was really this, and it's more, actually now all along it was really this.
Yeah.
Because you can have the copium of there are no coincidences and it's all been planned since FNAF 1, but very obviously there have been some shifts.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't think all of them have been shifts. I know a big criticism of Ruin and the idea of the Mimic is that a lot of people have been saying it's a retcon. I don't think it was a retcon. I think it just wasn't said well. I don't think it was seeded well enough in Security Breach, so it definitely feels like a retcon, but I don't think it was, because there are some seeds of it fairly early on.
Yeah, it's a clarification, because I don't think it's any secret that what we got when Security Breach first dropped was not exactly what the main plan was.
For sure. And I feel like Tails is also a course correction as well in that sense. Yes.
And there's a lot of it sounds like there's a lot of miscommunication, and it happens.
Oh yeah.
But I think Security Breach needed honestly another 6 months in the old oven.
Oh, at least. And then there's also the whole thing with scope creep, right? I'm sure maybe at first it could have launched in like the 2-3 year timeline that they originally planned.
Yeah.
But as they were like, oh, let's add this idea. Scott comes in and says, oh, add this thing in there. And then suddenly it's a 4-year or 5-year project and they only have those 3 years.
Yeah.
It definitely needed more time, I think, and you can even see that in that, like, now the state of the game, it's still messy, sure, but it's not buggy. There's like barely any glitches that you still encounter. They've added some very important quality of life things, like the whole save function after 6 a.m. and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think they definitely improved it, but at launch, it was rough. I played it day one, and I'm sure like a lot of us played it immediately, and that was a rough week.
I got soft locked on day 2.
Oh yeah, no, I think I remember in the like stream where I just played it straight. There was like 2 or 3 times where I would just get soft locked like before I could save for a while, and the worst time, what made me end the stream and shut it off. It was post 6 a.m. and I was like midway through doing all the stuff. I'd had gotten Monty's parts because I went after Chica originally. It was just a matter of put it on Freddy, go down to the basement.
Yeah.
And then I get out of Freddy at the little Simon Says desk. I hit E on the computer, but I was too close to Freddy. So it put me in Freddy and hit the computer and soft locked the game.
Oh, Oh, that's
And
harsh.
and that was the moment where I shut off the game, pulled up a YouTube video of the ending, and then we closed stream. I was like, cool, we did it. We beat it, guys. It's all over.
It's you never like to see that, especially as a developer, like seeing everyone having that much trouble. And I do, to be fair and balanced, I do think it is a significant problem with how games are released.
Oh, for sure.
In this era, like day one patches are now like expected unless even Nintendo games at this point have day one patches. Like this,
it's I think we can all agree, like, the developers, the artists, like the people working on these games are obviously very talented, but they're not given the time and they're often not paid enough. You know, it's things like that. And I don't think, I'm sure Steel Wool as an indie company is paying everyone fine, but it's that deadline crisis that hits all these companies so hard.
Yeah. And it's just, so like, I will give them the, hey, we should expect some bugs. But the thing is there was so many game breaking or soft locking bugs. It was just like, man, I don't know if I can get through this. I think I uninstalled because I was stuck. I had Chica's voice box, but I accidentally went into a vent that was supposed to be the secondary route. When you have the options between M.X.E.S and then
the like salad bar area.
Yeah. To go tackle Chica or to just get out of there. I can't remember the exact specifics, but because I went in that vent, it acknowledged that I already had Chica's box, but also I shouldn't have Freddy, so I couldn't summon him, no matter what I did. And so it was just like, well, I can't summon Freddy, so I can't install any more parts. So I guess I'm done.
Yeah. And then it's even like minor things too. Like I went for Monty's route, and then later on you do have to go. I went for
Roxy.
I went for the first arcade where you go through El-Chips, go through the arcade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vanessa. Yeah.
So I did that. So I never had gone down to do the pizza minigame for Chica. I never did that.
Yeah.
So then when the game just vaguely gestures, try going this way to do the Chica boss fight, I accidentally wandered into that pizza office. So, but then it worked, and it was like, okay, yes, do this minigame for no reason.
Yeah.
And I did it for no reason. And I got the same security badge I had for no reason. But what I did do is summon 2 extra Chicas somehow. So in that kitchen, there were 3 Chicas wandering around.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't even like an exploit, because like with the Monty replication glitch, it's an exploit. You can do it on accident, but it's hard. That was a very easy accident to have 3 Chicas.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the security breach did not launch well. And it is an interesting case. I can't think of a single other game where the DLC to the game is that vastly improved in not only bugginess, but atmosphere and tone than the base game.
Right. Yeah, no,
because I think Ruin really showed everyone like, hey, we are competent at making games. Trust us. This time we had time to work on it. Like,
oh yeah, 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, I think the scope of the mall was too big and they weren't ready for it. And then when they reduced the scope, made it more linear, which I didn't. I mean, after Security Breach, I did not mind how linear it was.
I mean, we're talking about a game where every other game we sit in one place for the entire game. So like linear is already a slight, quote unquote, improvement.
Right.
This is coming from someone. Final Fantasy 13 is my favorite Final Fantasy. And that is a hallway simulator. Like I readily
it is.
But I like it because it's pretty and everything is planned out well. And I don't have to go grind for stuff. You know, I don't mind linearity if it serves the game. And I think it does serve Ruin very well.
Yeah, I agree. But, and I mean, just tying it back to, I guess, like the main topic of like the cynicism is that like it really comes through mostly on the story. Like, the story is the biggest thing because I was all in 1 through 4. I was a little disappointed with like what 4 implied. I was like, well, you know, that was a choice. security and well, not security breach, sister location onward is like where the story feels like it feels so fluid, almost too fluid, where there's no concrete thing. And I would just love, I would love a foundation to be like, this is truth. This much we know for sure.
Anything like one of the biggest things I've been hoping for, and I don't think we'll ever get it. One of the biggest things I've been hoping for, and it's super simple. Just one Reddit post of one sentence could solve a lot of the current issues anyway.
Yeah.
And it would just be Scott or Steelwool coming out and directly stating, are the Tales from the Pizzaplex books fully canon to the game's timeline? That's all they have to say, yes or no. It's one thing. It doesn't give us any answers. It doesn't solve any questions, but it lets us know what we're working with. Because right now we don't.
Yeah, and that's really hard. The books.
Yeah.
The books. The
movie coming out, like.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is I'd like to take the movie, and just please, for the love of God, just let it be something else. Like, yes, it's FNAF. It is what it is, an adaptation, but please just let it be its own thing and not have any implications.
I don't think it will. I really don't. What I do think is its purpose, if it is supposed to tell us anything lore related, it might just be to course correct and be like, hey, FNAF 1, the game, doesn't take place when the restaurant is open.
Yeah.
If anything. But I don't even, I think it feels so fully separate. I mean, Abby as a complete invention with no previous mention, things like that. It'd be one thing if William was using the fake name he used in the Silver Eyes, but it's a completely new fake name even.
Yeah, right.
So it feels so separate that I hope it is just a separate thing.
Yeah.
No,
it's got to be. But it's...
I have another course correction that I don't think we'll get ever. This is like even less likely than the Reddit post, but a way if they ever try to end the current story and start a new one or something like that. Like I've been hoping for years we get like a the Dark Anthologies pictures thing where it's just tell your story with a few games, end that story, tell a new story with a similar format. Yeah. I don't think they'd do that. I think we're in too deep.
No, we're way too deep at this point.
Yeah, but if they ever somehow were to end, I think what this community could really, really benefit from is something like, I think it's called Popgo's Archives, where the dev team at Popgo's released a, I guess, game, quote, it's more of a gallery where like there are some like bits from games that were not released, things, some behind the scenes stuff, but in it they have, well, kind of like a character encyclopedia, but it's got assets and models of every character ever released and like just a quick paragraph.
Yeah.
Like not, hey, this is everything they did. Here's, hey, this is their name. This is one of the things they've done. Just something to work with. I don't think we'd ever get that, but it would sure be nice.
God, it would be great, right? I really feel that at this point in time, well, first off, I think Help Wanted would have been the absolute perfect way to just, and I don't know why they didn't stick to those guns. It's just like, Help Wanted is a perfect soft reboot. If you stay with that choice and you work with that choice, it is a perfect soft reboot. It's like those games were just fabrications, but there is some truth in them. We know, like those games were simple enough to be like, okay, this, and this happened, definitely.
Exactly.
And it set up a new villain perfectly. It was like, Glitch Trap, this is your new threat for the next 3 games. Have fun. Would have been great to just leave it with that. And then just somewhere in Security Breach, that all went out the window for some other idea. And it really comes down to really feeling like the team is wanting to subvert expectations so much. And it's really getting to the point now that I'm worried, or at least I'm feeling right now, it's like, hey, we got another Game of Thrones season. What was the last one? 8 on our hands?
God,
or
yeah. 9? It was 8 or 9. I think 8 feels right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never watched it. I just know.
Yeah. You just, it was 8 seasons, but like,
yeah,
truly Truly, like trying to subvert expectations is a dangerous game to play because eventually you're going to get off your story and there's no going back.
Yeah. Sometimes an expected story will be more satisfying than a unsatisfying unexpected story. You know, I'd rather expect a very satisfying conclusion and get one, frankly.
Yeah. You need to let the audience have the win. We all like a good twist, but at the same time, we all knew at the end of the day that the Avengers were going to beat Thanos in Endgame. We knew that was happening, but like how it happened and the consequences were unexpected.
But what about the next Avengers movie where we meet the Bavengers, who are completely unrelated to the Avengers, but they do a similar thing, and there is a comic book about them. So you can, if you read that comic book, this wouldn't have been a surprise. Guess you should have read it.
Yeah.
I do wonder, I want to see if there's a way to find like very, very light casual fans of the franchise and see what their reaction to Ruin was. Because to people like you, me, and other people in the community, like we kind of had a feeling like, okay, this is probably a trap. I'll keep hearing things about the Mimic. Maybe that'll show up. And then we see the Mimic. It's like, okay, yeah, we heard about this. We get that. If you like just played like, I'll be gracious and say like maybe Help Wanted and Security Breach, and then you played Ruin. Do you have any idea what's going on right now? I feel like you wouldn't.
You know, I have... You know, there's one friend of mine that she casually, like, she's watched, like, all of Matt's playthroughs on, like, GT Live and that sort of stuff, and she was there when we were playing through Ruin. I'd be interesting to see what her take on it, because I don't know how deep of a dive she's gone into, especially with the books, because I do think, I think if you had no idea the Mimic was on the way, I think that's a good, solid twist. And there are good hints throughout the thing of it definitely being like, I don't think we're talking to
like
Gregory.
That's not Gregory. Yeah.
And then you have right before you defeat kill Roxy, there's this moment quote, of unquote, like, oh, this is definitely not Gregory.
Something's wrong here.
Yeah.
I think they successfully seeded Gregory being a trap. I don't know if they seeded Burntrap not being here or being the Mimic ? We don't even really know that.
Yeah.
I think that feels odd.
That
feels weird.
Because this is how I think. Like, I know most people like theorize about like what's happening and all that sort of stuff. When I theorize, I am always going like, what was the like narratively? How do I fix this? And I think like the way you fix that is the Mimic is Burntrap. I think that like makes a lot of sense. It keeps the Burntrap character as some form of villain in some way, shape, or form. And then that way you can still play around with Glitch Trap. I think doing Glitch Trap is still there. He has to be, right?
See, I feel like he is, but at the same time, if the Princess Quest ending is canon, which it seems to be implied to be, he shouldn't be.
Yeah,
which is weird.
I think you leave Glitch Trap. Like you can have. This is. If I were taking this, if someone said, "Hey Dan, FNAF's yours now," you figure it out.
I'll fix it. Yeah.
Okay. You keep. Burntrap is the Mimic. Glitch Trap still exists.
Sure.
Those two, if they fuse, is Afton back.
Yeah, I feel like that was I feel like with Security Breach, it's very, I definitely feel like that's where the story was intended to go. Of like, we are making Burntrap as perfect as possible. So if we put Glitch Trap in it, we have William again.
Yeah. And and then Ruin would be the separation of those two. And introducing a different part of a different glitch trapped controlled human.
Yeah.
You introduce that at the end of Ruin. You're like, okay, this person, we've dealt with Vanessa, this person's next.
And they're going to try to do it again.
Yeah, and we got to put a stop to it.
I think narratively that does track the easiest.
Yeah. And there is a way to do it in a way that could feel natural. But I mean, at this point in time, Help Wanted 2 it could be a prequel, or it could be a direct sequel.
Oh god. Here's the worst. Okay, so this is another thing this is one of my complaints about the current narrative, is we have at least 3, technically 4 different ways of having something shown to the player that is not real. Right? Because we've had illusion discs since the Silver Eyes. We've had them for a while.
Yeah.
Now we have the Mimic.
Mm-hmm.
And now in like a week, so I guess kind of spoilers a little bit with the book coming out, introduces hallucinogenic gas.
Great.
So another thing that will make it so what you see isn't real. Technically, you could argue VR/AR in these games can make things appear real that aren't real. Mm-hmm. So when we have all these things that can make things not real or real and mess with the vision, we really have nothing to work with. Because even things that are like evidence in games can just be straight up not true because it's an illusion or something.
Yeah.
And then that leads into Help Wanted 2, where like, okay, are we doing another VR game, or is someone just going to be having these illusionary, like weird mental panic attack things? Because at the end of the Help Wanted 2 trailer, the music fades out and there's a hissing sound. So now we have to be like, okay, is that gas? Is that hallucinogenic gas? And now the whole game is an illusion? I don't know anymore. And there's no way for me to find out.
Wasn't old teasers on Scott when security breach? God, I keep sister location. Gee,
I think I know where you're going with this. Go on.
Okay, you know exactly where I'm going with this. I'm pretty sure they mention a gas leak.
Yep. Which, again, slight spoilers for the next book. The hallucinogenic gas is involved with FNAF 4's location, FNAF 5's location. So, I think what it is. So this is an actual term. I've misused it, but I like the term, so I've just continued to use it incorrectly. It's a term called Bookman's Bluff, and I've been using it to mean anytime a story writer or an author will just include a bunch of things that don't mean anything at the current moment, but then later down the line, if they want to pretend foreshadowing has always existed, they can pick one of those things. And I think that's what the gas leak was. Do I think at sister location, Scott was planning to add hallucinogenic gas? No. Do I think now it's very convenient and there was enough gas-like things in sister location that he can? Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
And that kind of transitions to the next half of this topic, which is, was there ever a golden age of FNAF? Or was it just new? Because I hear a lot of the time that the golden age was FNAF 1 through 4. That I feel like that's pretty consistent in the community. Where like there's the Gen 1ers of FNAF, which is I liked FNAF 1 through 2, 3, 4. And then there's the second half is pretty good too.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I wouldn't put 4 in. 1 through 3, super solid, straightforward story with enough mystery and twists that you need to kind of solve through. Because like half of the fun in the beginning was like, who is Golden Fred? Like, what kid goes to this? Who are these security guards? Do they matter? Is Phone Guy the killer? Which was a
fun one.
Was it a classic?
Was it take?
Yeah. There was enough to kind of like piece together, and it was fun. And then 4 onward, like, just kept adding and adding and adding and adding to the point where it's just you can't keep up with it.
I think I agree with the story. And this is why I hesitate to say there was ever a like golden age of FNAF, to put it that way. I think the story in FNAF 1 through 3 is really solid in the sense that we don't have a lot of direct answers for anything, but we have enough to work with, and nothing is too contradictory at that point. But I would hesitate to say that would be the golden age of FNAF, only because of those 3, FNAF 1 has the only good gameplay. Like, if we're talking
No,
all
you're
in,
right.
FNAF 2's gameplay is really rough. And I know a lot of people really love FNAF 2. And hey, this is a call-out post. I'm getting spicy. 9 times out of 10, if you really like FNAF 2, you haven't played it. Because the gameplay, granted, I do agree that I think the way the lore was presented in FNAF 2 and started to course correct a solid story from the groundwork of FNAF 1, that's solid.
Yeah.
The Wither designs, those are pretty solid.
Yeah.
But the gameplay of FNAF 2 is atrocious.
It's
and it really
so hard.
it takes away from a lot of the really good renders in that game. Some of the withered renders on the cameras are some of Scott's best work. Perfect. Like some of the positioning of like withered Chica in some of those rooms. Amazing. You can't see it though. You're not allowed to. You have to wind the music box.
Yeah, you gotta wind that box, bro.
If you're not winding the music box, you're losing.
Yeah.
So, and then you go to FNAF 3, and I think FNAF 3 is an amazing aesthetic. I think FNAF 3's lore is unlocked in the most satisfying way of the series.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the gameplay. The gameplay is
so
rough.
bad. I did
and
not
the
like
jump
3.
scares, every single jump scare in FNAF 3 is bad. Like, I know you can argue the phantoms are a good idea, but the jump scare implementation of the phantoms is just noise. And everyone knows about Springtrap's lackluster jump scares.
How
I don't have to go
disappointing
there.
was that?
Right? And I think that even begins the trend of trying to make up for something else.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the story of like, oh, we didn't like this story beat, we're going to change it. I think FNAF 3 began that trend because I don't think the story was bad. I think it was, oh, that's not scary? I'll make FNAF 4. You know?
Yeah. Because I'll stand by this. I know that sometimes I could get a little flack for this, but I think overall, if we're those first 4 games, if you were to take one and say what is overall the best game out of all those, and I will say 4, because I think 4 has the best gameplay out of all of them, where you don't feel there's RNG, but you have enough ability, you can learn enough skill to stop everything effectively and like defeat the RNG. It felt balanced, at least to me. I think I did night 6 in a single try, and that felt great.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the story, like the method of how the story is delivered, I think was good. With like walking
the in
kid
between
through.
little mini games. Yeah.
I think the implications of said thing were the problem. And
Wait, you don't like Dream Theory? You don't like everything we've been trying to figure out not mattering?
Right? And the idea of like, you show the bite and it's not the bite of 87, it's 83.
God.
And you're just like, what? Then why, man? Why are you even doing this?
I love how the bite of 87 means nothing. And it's the biggest, like, first mystery in the entire franchise.
Way to take, like, that's what bothers me. The bite of 87 could have been the coolest moment in the entire franchise. The moment that you saw the animatronics flip from, just animatronics to killers. Such a powerful moment. And it's done off camera through phone guy, and then we don't even see
someone
it.
we never see the result of.
Yeah.
And frankly, you could argue we still don't have the answer to who even did it. And I don't think we're going to get one because I don't think it matters.
No, it really doesn't.
Oh man. Like, that's one of the things, like, I know the meme. I do love the meme of was that the bite of 87? Classic meme.
Yeah.
But no one can fault him for it because that was like, why would we assume it was the bite of 83?
We all thought the same thing.
Yeah.
It was only until you dug just a little deeper and like turned the TV on that you go, you mean tell me this is the bite of 83 now?
There's 2 bites?
Why is there 2 bites?
And then I think I'd agree that the FNAF 4 has the most skill-focused gameplay.
Yeah.
It's the least routine. Because as much as FNAF 1 is my favorite of those 4, I admit the gameplay of FNAF 1 is very routine. You do your routine and you win. Whereas FNAF 4, you actually have to like play a game.
Yeah, you have to make sure you're like in tune with where voices are and checking.
And like even in a small way, I just beat through Help Wanted again. and it's not the same exact games. But even then, like, you play through the FNAF 4 nights, and it's like, oh, okay, I have to listen for this, I have to check for that. You play the FNAF 1 night, it's, okay, where's Freddy? Cool. You know?
Yeah.
So I definitely see that. But even then, like, if I look at the first 4 games, FNAF 1, I think it's pretty solid gameplay, probably the best uncanny horror in the franchise. But obviously it's FNAF 1, so the story is not really there. There isn't really a story because it wasn't planned to be one yet.
Yeah.
And then we get FNAF 2, which has pretty good lore delivery, pretty good design, bad gameplay. FNAF 3, good lore delivery, somewhat rough lore, but decent lore, rough gameplay. FNAF 4, great gameplay, rough lore.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I don't think, I feel like, to me, when I hear FNAF used to be great and now it's rough, to me, that reads as the exact same kind of attitude of Pokemon used to be really good and now it's bad.
Yeah.
I think FNAF and Pokemon, and this is coming from someone, those are my 2 favorite franchises. FNAF and Pokemon were always a little mid.
Yeah.
It was always a little mid, but we liked it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought, but FNAF is a solid, like, especially those first 4 games, like, solid little indie game.
Yeah.
For a good scare, great content. You gotta love some content.
Great
that can
content.
be made
Oh,
from
it's perfect for content.
Yeah. But, like, outside of that, I mean, God, when was the first one? 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
It's just, for me, it was overshadowed by so many other games that I was currently playing. And, like, I just, like, for me, getting into horror gaming is a relatively newer thing for me. Like, I've only been doing it, like, really diving into it, probably within the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Because, I mean, my first time playing a horror game, I think I did Amnesia and then I did PT, which talk about a jump in
That's a
fear.
jump.
Yeah.
Amnesia's like kind of spooky.
Yeah.
PT unsettled me.
Oh yeah, I did it in the dark. I had my headphones on, but it's one of my.
I was
favorite
lucky
videos.
enough to be playing it with like friends, so there were other people in the room.
Yeah, and so like it wasn't until like relatively, I think once I played Outlast was the moment to go, I get horror gaming now. Like I don't normally play it casually.
Sure.
I'll play stuff with horror elements. I finished Prey earlier this year, and there's definitely moments
for sure.
of like one of the best jump scares I've ever had was on Prey.
Yeah.
Like
No, Prey was really well done, and it's I wouldn't call Prey a horror game.
no, it's not. It's
But
definitely not.
It can be very frightening, you know. And
Yeah.
like same thing with what was the game I just played recently? That was I'll think about it. You keep going.
Yeah, really at the end of the day, I was like, you know, FNAF, at least for me, it was like, I will make content with this stuff. I enjoy it enough to like deal with it. Before I was working for Game Theory, I really enjoyed watching Matt like dissect and figure out like what was going on. And like, I thought it was a really unique way of like storytelling in video games.
Yeah.
But then like the flaws of its system just started to become so much more apparent as I went on. And I think as more and more FNAF related stuff started controlling my life, like, dude, it's hard to, as a creative, it's hard to say, yeah, I make a living talking about this spooky animatronic game, and you're like, man, that is everything.
Oh, my relatives love when I say, oh yeah, I quit my full-time job to talk about Pizza Bear online. They love when I mention that. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and like right now, I'm starting to work towards a career shift here. Like I really want to get into like actual like TV show writing. I've actually done a few voiceover classes, and I think I'm actually gonna like really start to go all in on that stuff. But oh my God, I just blanked. Hold on. The point will come. Just give me a second.
I'll mention that I also like I was talking about like not necessarily a career shift for me, but I don't think I think I'll always make content in some form like this.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't think my like career that I've always strived for has been YouTuber.
Yeah.
It would be more so along the lines of something like voice acting. That's something I've always been really passionate about. And even if that does come true one day, and I do start getting those jobs, I think I would still definitely continue to make some kind of personal content like this. It would probably just change over time.
Yeah. And I think there's no problem. I think it's healthy, especially as creatives, to have evolution. Like,
for sure.
There's going to be a point in time where, you don't want to talk. Like right now, I finished my FNAF fan games series and I'm not going back. Like that was it. I'm done with it. I'm evolving to something else, and my stuff's been more commentary based lately, which feels a little better.
Yeah.
But I remember why I brought up the writing thing is like I've been wanting to start like writing stuff, and a few of my friends that were like working on their own little shows and getting them ready to get pitched. A couple of them said like, "Hey, we were thinking of doing like a FNAF type episode. Could you help us write it?" And I was like,
it'll haunt you forever.
Sure, I guess.
Well, it's like I don't think I'll ever be able to not produce FNAF content in some form. I think I've successfully pigeonholed myself, which I love the franchise. It's great. It's fine. It's starting to get a little difficult to think of a new theory weekly. Well,
yeah,
that's starting to drag. I'll figure that one out on my own. No, we'll figure that one out. But yeah, I think it's evolution, especially on the online space.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution is such a balancing act of like, how can I evolve what I'm doing without leaving behind the people who like what I'm doing now?
Yeah. And
obviously, no matter what you do, people will get left behind. But how do you minimize that?
Yeah. And I mean, YouTube makes it incredibly difficult because
for sure.
People, my style's changed, but like kind of like when I was really starting to pull in numbers, I had a very specific style. Like I took all of the years of editing and stuff, and I had like really polished stuff. Like that was what made my content really shine. And if YouTube would have stuck with like suggesting creators as opposed to topics, like that would have worked, because they could have expected the same. Like it's not a FNAF video. This one, I'm doing a Doom video this week. They could still expect that same quality, that same sort. They could expect me there, but because of how the algorithm works, it's like
it won't get recommended.
You didn't mention FNAF like once, bro. Like, what are you gonna do about that? And I'm like, I don't know.
It's that thing, because I keep trying to have people like the way I present. Like you said, it's trying to get people hooked on the way you present, not what you're presenting. And I think it's doable, but it's not doable with the algorithm.
Yeah.
And like you said, like that's the big issue of like, sure, you can create and cultivate a core audience of people who are like, I just like the way you present things and I would watch you talk about anything. But YouTube will not help you at all, and in fact will hinder you actively.
Yeah.
Even with this podcast, there was a moment when I found out it's counted, even though you upload it as a podcast, it's counted as a main channel video and an actual long form video.
Yep.
When I found that out, there was a moment where I was like, okay, either I live stream these so they get saved as VODs, and that way they don't affect my algorithm, or I make a second channel and I shoot the growth of this in the foot immediately.
Yeah. It's they don't help you. Like,
no. I got very lucky that this podcast has so far, knock on wood, not negatively impacted the algorithm of my channel.
Yeah.
Because so far, my top 10, for those who don't know, when you release a YouTube video, it'll rank it amongst your past 10 full uploads based on how many views are at that time comparatively. Super useful tool.
Yeah.
The podcast, it's doing so far exactly what it's supposed to, where the top 5 videos are like main channel videos and the bottom 5 are podcast videos. The only key here is the podcast keeps climbing on itself and the main channel doesn't sink under the podcast. That's all that needs to happen
that's
for everything to stay afloat.
Yeah, you're sitting real good right now.
So far, it's doing that. Worst case scenario, probably shove it to the second channel and just keep uploading into Spotify. But we'll see. So far, we're okay.
Yeah. I mean, my friend and I, we're starting our podcast. Is what I'm editing it right afterwards.
Sure.
And like,
I'm editing this right afterwards. So
yeah. We'll be there together.
Yeah.
But like, I know for a fact, because we are taking complete departure, we made a decision to be like, it can't have anything to do with my channel, because we're not going to talk about horror. We're not going to talk about like that stuff. We're going to talk about being creative and like what it's like, working in a creative industry and that sort of stuff. So like that's got to be its own separate channel. It's got to be its own separate thing. If I were to put it on my channel, my channel's already slowly dying, but like that would absolutely
it would just, the algorithm would just look at you and be like, hey, who are you? Anyway, get back in the line.
Yeah. Could you go back to talking about Garten of Bam Bam, please? Which
right.
I have been awakened. I see the importance of it now. But that's not.
I refuse. I live in ignorance. I made my OSHA video. I'm never talking about it again.
That's fair. That's fine. If I'm going to talk about it, I've now accepted it.
Fair. I mean, at this point, the algorithm really likes it. So I guess at this point, we're hitting close to 50 minutes, around an hour, kind of good in that area. We can move on to, I guess, some of the questions that have been submitted.
Let's do it.
And talk about some of those. We kind of already touched on this, but we can kind of be more definitive here. First one is from Anonymous, goes by she, her pronouns. Do you think the lore of FNAF will ever be fully solved, or will we never figure out the full story, even after the games have stopped releasing? Thank you for your question. We kind of touched on this earlier about like what would happen at the end of the franchise, but I know myself, I'm of the opinion, I don't think so.
No.
Not until Scott is, and I hope it's not for a very long time. I wish him very well, but Scott will have to have died for this to happen. I don't think he will it to not be solved.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, and this is something I can say with confidence, is we will never know the current story as of right now. The intended story as it stands right now, because as we talked about with like the kind of soft like retcons and soft stuff, whatever's on his giant board of FNAF lore, like as solid as he has it right now, if they continue to make these soft choices, that board is always going to be changing. So
yeah,
if someone,
I could see that.
If someone were to sneak in today on I'm not going to date the podcast, but like right now, if they went in and they snapped a picture of the board, a year from now, they would have the wrong story.
That's fair. I could see that. Like, it might one day be fully solved, but specifically the story by the end of the franchise would have been maybe fully solved.
Yeah. Maybe.
No, I see that.
Yeah. I could see it being solved eventually when the games stop releasing.
Yeah. Because, I think the problem right now, at least, and again, more information can always fix this. In our current state, I fully believe, and I think this is a cold take.
Yeah.
There are many different, completely separate, but fully evidence-backed timelines you could create with where we're at. And I think that's the big issue, is that like solving FNAF isn't really about finding the correct timeline anymore, but it's finding your best version of a timeline. Because I could make 3 timelines in a row, all completely different, all complete different dates, and fully evidence and reason my way to it.
Yeah. And then there's just going to be some evidence points that you're like, this doesn't fit on how this timeline works, so it's gone.
Or it's nightmare gas, or it's an illusion disc, or it's the mimic. You know, we've been given, or it's an indie game. Like,
talking about the
so many tools to just dismiss things at this point. Like, as an English major, my whole college career was, there's no right answer, there's the best argued answer.
Yeah.
And that is kind of FNAF at this point.
Definitely.
But thank you for your question, Anonymous. This one was very small font. I've just been screenshotting emails and putting them on a Google Doc, so sometimes I gotta lean in.
Oh, so that's fair. Hey man, I'm not getting
we have
any
a question. Yeah, right. We have a question from Reskel. They them pronouns. Thank you for your question. What is your opinion on Five Nights at Freddy's fans who claim to be fans but have never played the games, read the books, or personally participated in any of the media? Talking about the type of fan, in parentheses myself included, who interact with the franchise exclusively via YouTube videos and the community surrounding it. I think any decent person can agree. Obviously, gatekeeping sucks.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to. I didn't grab this question to be like, let's talk about how valid these fans are.
Mm-hmm.
I more so brought up this question because I thought it was an interesting point that I feel like FNAF as a franchise might have the largest percentage of fans who have never personally interacted with the franchise itself.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I think if there's any game out there that has enough content, has enough theory videos on, like enough that you don't have to experience the original game or book or whatever, like FNAF is that. Like,
for sure.
There's plenty of people that have only watched like the videos we do on Game Theory, and like that's their FNAF experience, but they're fascinated by like how wild of a ride this is becoming.
Yeah, or like I've got a couple friends who, like, when they found out what I do, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love those games." I'm like, "Oh, have you played them?" They're like, "No, I watch Markiplier." I'm like, "Gotcha." You know, and I think it's completely like we've said, like obviously there's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's really interesting. Like, of all, I could think of like maybe Genshin Impact, you could say, has a similar percentile of like people who really like the characters and story but haven't actually played the game.
Yeah.
But I think by far and away, FNAF feels like the poster child for, oh, I love this franchise, but I've never played the game.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting. I guess it is really YouTube kind of pushing that forward.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a lot of people say that like FNAF did a lot for gaming and FNAF did a lot for storytelling and that sort of stuff. FNAF did a lot for digital content. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like, there is now a genre where you cannot experience the original creation through everyone else. And like,
yeah,
you can call yourself, I absolutely can call yourself a fan of FNAF, even if you haven't touched a controller. I always encourage that at some point in time you should.
Yeah, it's good too, and they're like $5 games. Like, it's available, you know.
Yeah, like it's definitely worth your time to at least try it once, even if you're really bad at it, just to be like, okay, I get it, or like I understand why this is.
And there's always the levels with horror content, especially, of engagement, where like watching a horror game be played is only so scary. Playing it gets scarier. Playing it in VR gets terrifying.
I still to this day have a really hard time playing Help Wanted. Like,
I, for the first time in my life, played the Night Terrors levels of Help Wanted last week.
Oh,
and
man.
I needed my wife in the room on mic so I could hear her talking to me. Because I tried to play it the week before.
Yeah.
And I got 10 seconds in and I sat on the ground and exit and just hit the home button to close the game.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah. I mean, like, I enjoy watching Markiplier play horror games.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think, especially now, I think he's easily one of the best, like, Let's Players
for sure
in the community. Like, and so I usually watch horror games through him unless it's something that I'm like, okay, I need to experience this for myself. Then I turn off the video and get ready for a stream or whatever. But there's sometimes like you just don't want to sit down and play a horror game because you still have another 30 hours of Baldur's Gate to finish, you know? And
exactly.
You know, the way we experience games, sometimes we need a cut down. We need a quick version. I know one of my friends, the friend I'm starting the podcast with, Bridget, she loves Sonic to death.
Yeah.
Like, huge fan of, like, the original shows, but, like, she didn't play a whole lot of the games. So she just watched, like, cut downs of Sonic Adventure 2 cutscenes. So she understood what happened.
by far my favorite game in the franchise.
Oh yeah, it is hot trash, but it is perfect hot trash.
It's my hot trash. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like,
it's
it is
delicious,
mine.
delicious hot trash.
Yeah, it is McDonald's, and I will eat it every day.
You know, quick tangent, Sonic might be a contender as well for fan base that doesn't play the games. Because now that I think about it, like, we all admit the Sonic games are rough. There's like 4 good ones.
Yeah.
But it is a huge fan base. So I do wonder how many people like maybe played like one of the original Sonics. Even then, they're on the Sega. They're not super accessible. Like, that I think that might be a contender for huge fan base who has never played the games. And nobody points to Sonic fans. It's like, oh, you're not a real fan unless you've played Sonic CD. You know, like, no, we get it, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
so yeah.
I struck, just a really quick jump into a little fandom before we go to the next one. I've struggled for a long time because I've covered Doom quite a few times on my channel. And I personally consider myself a big Doom fan. It was like one of the first-person shooters that I played. I played it with my dad when I was young. My mom saw it, got really upset at him because it was violent.
It's the poster child of violent games.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I have a lot of fondness for Doom and what Doom stands for. Well, maybe not that stands for. I mean, it made some questionable choices right there at the end.
Well,
but
what it means in general.
Yeah, what it means in general. It means a lot to me. But, like, I cannot do Ultra Nightmare on either of them. And there's a lot of time that I see, like, Doom creators easily just blasting through and they go, like, did it. And I'm like, man, I ain't got the time or the patience to learn this. I'm just going to accept that I'm considered a casual fan, if anything.
And that's another thing. Like, some of these FNAF games, like, we can go into, like, the horror and the difficulty. Like, some of these games are legitimately... Night 4 and Sister Location is some of the hardest games I've ever played.
Yeah.
It took me, like, an hour to beat the 5th night in FNAF 1 and Help Wanted.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm lucky enough that this is my job, so I can spend 4 or 5 hours on a stream and just play this game. That's a huge investment. Like,
yeah, no kidding.
So FNAF especially, but like with any media, like if you like the media, guess what? You're a fan. Congratulations. Like, but it's interesting that FNAF seems to be one of the biggest fan bases that a huge percentage just has not played the games.
Yeah.
But thank you for your question. I'll move on to, who is this? A question from Judge, him. Thank you for the question. Judge sent in like, I think 9 questions. We're just going to cover one of them.
Okay, great.
I thought it'd be the most fun to talk about. And we kind of touched on the idea of this, but this is more granular, more specific. What do you think is currently in the FNAF 4 box? And I think that is an interesting question because that has changed for sure.
Yeah. It's changed too much.
It's at this point, it might not even be a thing anymore. I think my answer might be the FNAF 4 box in the current version of the story never was a thing. I think that's where I kind of have to be.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The box, like everyone like wants to solve what's in the box, but the box is so much more of a symbolism than anything else. Because the whole thing was just Scott saying, you know, like, maybe not everything comes together cleanly. Like, that's what it meant. Personally, I feel like that's such a cop-out. That's just like, so you made some decisions you didn't like, and okay.
I mean, that's what the indie dev thing was. I feel like the indie dev thing, it could have been a great soft reset, but instead it was, hey, if we make a mistake, just assume that the indie dev made the mistake and the new thing is right.
Yeah.
Like,
And I really, what's in the box is, it just ultimately doesn't matter because it ultimately is just there to represent the things that Scott doesn't want to address.
Yeah.
It's permanently locked. No one knows. No, he's not going to open them. And like even just the sentence. What is the exact sentence? Like some things are
better left forgotten or something.
Yeah. That's all it is. It's just like these are this is like they're just Scott's regrets.
Yeah.
In video game form of like I wish
you could even argue metaphorically the box is Scott's own head.
Yeah.
And what is inside is whatever the current version of the story is.
Yeah.
And the reason the box is there is not to lock it away, but just because as so long as it's in the box, it can change and no one will be the wiser.
Schrodinger's cat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's Schrodinger's lore is what it is.
So we're never gonna know.
No.
And if he does, I would be very surprised if he opened it.
I don't see it. I don't think it would ever be opened. If anything, maybe it gets alluded to again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it would ever be opened at this
there's
point.
no way.
And if it does, it's not what was originally in there. I can guarantee you that.
Absolutely not.
But thank you for your question, Judge. And then I've got one more question from Michelle. She, her. Thank you for the question, Michelle. Do you believe there's any hints in Security Breach that foreshadows the M.X.E.S system from Ruin? And I think that's interesting because we definitely have, like, if you look granularly at Security Breach, you can find hints towards the Mimic. They're small, but you can find them.
Yeah.
As far as M.X.E.S and like having this whole thing where the Mimic is actively being hidden away, that could have been a retcon.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so hard to see it in anything in Security Breach. Mostly you have to get very, very detail oriented to like see anything. I don't think there's any true hint about it because whether it was the intent was to have it there and it just never was implemented, or it wasn't in the cards right then because they expected Burn Trap to be that thing underneath the Pizzaplex. Like, I just don't think they had it in the cards, and they didn't know. And then as soon as it was time to unleash the Mimic, it was like, okay, we're gonna make the security system, and we'll make it.
Yeah, there needs to be a reason that no one found it until now. So let's do that real quick.
Yeah, because I mean, Faz wrenches weren't a thing.
No, Faz wrenches weren't a thing. The paneling that is now all over the Pizzaplex was not previously.
No.
You can see it even in the endoskeleton design, where like Roxy was changed, and now her eyes have those ports. She looks like that's a different endoskeleton, so that is a change to make it work in Ruin, which is fine. But then it's a matter of if we're willing to change and animatronic design to fit the current game, are we able ever again to use animatronic design as evidence for something?
Yeah. I do think I think they could have been bold, and I think they could have went back and retroactively added stuff when the DLC dropped.
Just update it to Security Breach?
Yeah, I think that would have been
really
a
funny.
fine and solid choice to do, to be like, hey, we updated this and we added like a few extra details for you that want to go back into Security Breach.
I'm here for Steelwool just gaslighting us and not mentioning it. I think that'd be honestly true FNAF fashion to like slightly troll the fan base, to just update it so there are no like slight design changes, and it's just always been that way now.
Yeah. What do you mean? Prototype on the bottom of Freddy's always been there, you fool.
Yeah, we showed you his feet 4 times to show you the prototype tag. Did you forget?
Yeah, go back and watch.
The only hint I can possibly link to, and I brought this up in my Who Made M.X.E.S video, and I don't fully believe that theory, but it's one of those that like, and I say this in the video, it's one of those theories that like, I don't know if it's true. I don't even think it's true maybe, but it's worth bringing up, so we might stumble onto something that is true.
Okay.
And the only hint I can possibly think of for M.X.E.S would be to imply that someone was down there making stuff after FNAF 6. And the only implication I could find in Security Breach, and to an extent FNAF 6, but that could have been a Bookman's bluff where he just didn't do that, and now there's a reason for it. In Henry's speech, when he's burning everything in FNAF 6, we see burning shots of Scrap Trap, Scrap Baby, and Molten Freddy.
Yeah.
We never see Lefty. In that cutscene, you do not see Lefty burn.
Oh. I guess you
And
don't,
then in
do you?
And then in Security Breach, we're in a room where we are able to burn all the rooms of FNAF 6 to fight Burn Trap. And there's 3 rooms. And then in Ruin, we go through those rooms ourselves.
Mhm.
And there's 3 rooms. So like if anything possibly at all points to M.X.E.S, the only thing I could think of is that could imply that Henry stayed around longer than we thought he did and made M.X.E.S. That's it. That's all. And that's probably not even true. I don't know. But like,
Yeah.
I can't think of any other possible hints towards a security system that was built specifically to hide a mimic that wasn't even in the cards like 3 games ago.
Yeah. I think if anything, if it was an idea before the release date, it was too late to implement any of it. Because they still had a lot of game they had to make. And they had a lot of bugs they had to squash.
For sure. I guess on the topic of, and this is kind of not a question, but it's something that I find interesting that we could bring up. I did actually get a question, but I don't remember who submitted it because I didn't save it. But it's in that realm of VR and what is being seeded, what is new. The Nightmare Own plushes, and also things like the pause menu messages that we see in Ruin. That are very weird, like the Happy Birthday Cassie, things like that, like those weird ones. If the pause menu, a functional, like usable tool, if something like the pause menu can imply lore, but then things in game don't, do we have any foundation to work with?
Exactly. And that's what makes it so frustrating.
Do we have a floor at this point? Like, does the game case tell us lore now? Like, where does this stop?
Yeah.
And it even goes into things like the Scholastic email. I don't know how involved you are with the book debate on Twitter right now, but a big debate in the book side of the community is, are the Tales books canon to the games?
Yeah.
One of the biggest evidences that keeps getting brought up for the yes, they are canon argument is that on the back of the cover, it says books that are set like in the unit. Hold on. I've said it wrong before and I've gotten yelled at. Hold on.
You can't say it wrong. Don't say it wrong.
Let me quote it directly.
This is what makes covering this so hard. We have to be so specific.
Man, I can't find it. All right. It was on one of the book covers and on one of the Scholastic listings. It was something along the lines of set in the like universe of set in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, or like it takes place in the FNAF game thing or something like that. And that's one of the biggest pieces of evidence. It's like, oh, they're canon because it said they are.
Yeah.
But Scholastic put it on the back. And then the people reached out to Scholastic because at some point it was taken off the website and someone emailed like, hey, did this change? And someone at Scholastic sent an email and said, no, it's still the description is still these books are like set in the universe of FNAF or something like that. And it's one of those things where like, does that matter? We don't have a floor anymore.
No. I mean, the biggest mistake that they ever did with the books was even remotely tying them to anything that's happening, because like the original 3 felt like, okay, they're going to be a separate thing, and then Sister Location comes out and says, nah, dude's Afton. That's Afton, my guy, and Henry exists, and you're like, okay, that's a lot to process. I guess we'll get through this.
And it was I'd never loved, I think the only way it could have ever worked in a non-headache inducing way is having the books tell these completely separate tales, but have the tales play by the same rules as the universe. Because I think that's what we get the most out of the books is like, oh, this is how Remnant works. This is how Agony works and things like that. But the moment that they started name dropping things, I was like, oh, okay, now we have nothing to work with anymore.
Yeah. It's like, okay, great. All right. I'll sort through this.
And I do worry that a game like a DLC like Ruin might not feel as narratively satisfying to someone who doesn't read the books.
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
if your game doesn't stand on its own legs without reading a separate book, that's a rough sell to anyone new to this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that's happening with the MCU, right? Like, there's so much extra content you have to sift through now. And it's just like, well, now I'm exhausted. I don't want to watch the Avengers anymore because I don't know what's going to happen.
I like superheroes, all right? I love that stuff. I have not watched a Marvel movie for like, I don't know, 6 years. I think the last Marvel movie I watched was maybe Iron Man 2.
Wow.
Because I missed like 4 or 5 of them. And then when Avengers came out, I'm like, I don't know what's I watched like the first half and I don't really know what's going on or who these people are that I'm supposed to know. And then I would go online and be like, hey, who are these people? And it was like, oh, watch these 6 movies and then watch Avengers again. Yeah. And now we're at a point where like, I can't. I'm trying to catch up on One Piece. I can't watch all of the MCU right now.
My God. Yeah, I know. Ugh. I'm on Punk Hazard, just for the record.
I wish. Are you watching or reading?
I'm watching.
You'll be okay. Sorry, we tried to read it and then we switched to watching. Punk Hazard is what made us switch to watching because something about reading Punk Hazard just didn't mesh.
There's a surprising amount of just talking, and there's like 3 solid episodes where they just lore dump on you, and you're like,
yeah,
okay.
Which when you're watching, you'd be like, cool. All right, next one. In the book, when I'm like, if I'm reading a graphic novel and a page is just text, it's rough.
Yeah, it is rough. But that's where I am. In case anyone was interested in my One Piece adventure.
Me and the wife are at, I believe we're in the second half of Whole Cake Island, so we're like 2 or 3 arcs ahead of you. We're a little bit ahead of you. I think we're on like episode like 840 something.
God, I can't. I know, like I know some spoilers, and I'm really excited to get the whole cake.
Yeah, no, I've been trying my best to avoid spoilers, but recent spoilers in the anime I cannot avoid. You know,
yeah. So a certain event was way too big to not ignore.
Yeah. Some type of transformation was literally my entire social media feed for 4 weeks.
Yeah, I'm like, cool. Well, I know this is happening. Excited to get there.
I guess I'm just glad that they still use goofy sound effects when I get there. Anyway, I could talk about One Piece for 3 hours, so I guess we'll
join us for our One Piece podcast.
Yeah, right. But I just want to say thanks again. I guess, do you have anything you would like to shout out? Any upcoming projects? Any upcoming videos?
Well, I'm currently. I talked to you a little bit about this. I might backtrack a little bit on some things I told you, but I'm working on a video talking about, why does everyone hate theories? Well, what? Because I was like, sure, to a degree, it's me kind of defending my boss, but also it's just more of like, I'm fascinated. Like, why are we so mad about stripes on a kid's shirt?
Yeah, there is a weird amount of vitriol in the community about theories.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm exploring. That Cyber Channel, stream Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. PST.
Well, thank you very much. And I guess if there's no furthers, you know what? You can tell it's still a new podcast when I forgot the outro. So let me just pull it up really quick. Because I got a new one last episode. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. We'll use that one. And I forgot it immediately.
Perfect.
So let me just pull this up. And I've been Riot Toast. It's been a great having you on. Hopefully we'll see you again. But for now, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. I hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.